Welcome to today's webinar. Before we introduce today's speaker, I want to make a few brief announcements. We know many of you are listening in from far away and can attend local events or programs. That's why we provide this free webinar series. We host multiple webinars per month, so please visit our website to view the current schedule for 2017. Simply visit our website at www.johnson. Do I do it again? Welcome to today's webinar. Before we introduce today's speaker, I want to make a few brief announcements. We know many of you are listening in from far away and can't attend local events or programs. That's why we provide this free webinar series. We host multiple webinars per month, so please visit our website to view the current schedule for 2017. Simply visit our website, www.johnson-center.org, and click on the webinars link on the right-hand side. New webinars and events are often added, so if you are not on our email list, I encourage you to visit our website and click on the Join Our Email List link that appears on the homepage. We still have some great summer events coming up, including free family fun, sibling summer camps, and social skills group. To get instant news and events from the Johnson Center, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, as we often announce grant and scholarship opportunities, research opportunities, and last-minute events and presentations there. And be sure to check out our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Johnson Center. There you will find a library of several of our past webinars covering a wide variety of topics. For those of you that are local, be sure to check out Back to School Bash coming up on Saturday, September 9th. This is a free, fun family event for all children ages 4 to 10. You can find more information on our Facebook page. And be sure to follow our colleagues at the Autism Research Institute as they host their own webinar initiative and they share some great resources on their website and social media pages. If you would like a certificate of attendance after today's webinar, look for a follow-up email in your mailbox 1 hour after the webinar concludes. It will contain instructions on how to get your certificate. And if you have questions during today's webinar, you may type them into your GoToWebinar control panel. Now please welcome today's speaker, Jeanna Hill. Jeanna is the Family Care Coordinator and the Child Life Specialist here at the Johnson Center. She provides a number of wonderful resources for the children and families we serve, from helping to coordinate clinical care to providing medical play sessions that allow children to become more familiar and comfortable during any medical experience. Please welcome Jeanna Hill.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today to listen to Foods in Schools, Navigating the School Environment for a Child with Food Allergies or Restrictions. Information for this webinar was gathered through a series of interviews with parents of children with food allergies, food sensitivities, or food restrictions. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank those that participated in the interviews, sharing their stories, and allowing us to use their experiences as examples for today's discussion. In today's webinar, we will be discussing how to navigate the classroom and cafeteria environment for children with food allergies. We will also be reviewing some resources that will help you prepare and plan for accommodations and support in the school environment, as well as talking through some developmental concerns parents should be aware of when working with children with food allergies or restrictions. As mentioned before, information was gathered through a series of interviews, and we'll be discussing stories shared by those that participated that will help us to better identify challenges, as well as review some creative ways of tackling those challenges. Although we will be reviewing some policies and procedures, such as creating a 504 plan, this webinar is really about sharing information from other parents that have been through this process and learned firsthand from those experiences. So please note, personal information gathered through these interviews has been changed for privacy reasons. And during this webinar, I will be answering some questions from other parents, or if you'd like to share your own story or you have a piece of advice, feel free to do so during the webinar. I'm going to give everyone a moment to take a look at this graphic. What do you see? At first, you may see a group of kids enjoying a slice of pizza together, but as you look closely, you will notice that one child is not eating a slice of pizza and has been left out. He has been excluded from the experience. His frown indicates he's feeling sad, maybe isolated or embarrassed, and food can be such a social factor. For family time, we may gather around the table for dinner, or we may enjoy going out to eat with our friends. For celebrations, we indulge in yummy food and treats. And for individuals with food allergies, these experiences can be very stressful. For parents of children with food allergies, helping our kids have these life experiences is a very important job. And how can we do that without risking the safety and health of our kiddos? How do we protect them from allergic reactions and social stigmas at the same time? These are some of the questions and fears that go through a parent's mind. And what I found from my interviews with these families is that the best approach is to exclude the food, not the child. We should always encourage our kids to be part of these social gatherings. Can you think of a way that this graphic could be different if we did that? During our interviews, one parent commented that it became really hard to watch their child continue to be excluded from social gatherings. It wasn't until this parent included herself in the experience that things started to change. She would communicate with teachers and parents in advance so that in the case where food was going to be offered, her child had an alternative treat to eat. For example, in the graphic above, let's provide a little backstory. Say this was a pizza party for a friend. What this parent could have done is reached out to the family beforehand and offered to bring in an alternative gluten-free, dairy-free pizza for their child. This way, the child is able to participate in the pizza party while also staying accountable to their dietary restrictions. As we go through this webinar, we will be discussing food allergies, food intolerances, food sensitivities, and restrictions. And before doing so, I wanted to briefly review some differences. So food allergies involve your immune system and are caused by your body's response to the offending food as an invader. They can be potentially life-threatening and may include itching, hives, coughing, watery eyes, nausea, cramps, swelling of the throat, and they may have an acute onset. Listed here are some of the most common allergens, including fish and shellfish, wheat and soy, tree nuts, peanuts, and milk. Food intolerance is when a component of the offending food cannot be broken down by your body, and some symptoms include gas, constipation, abdominal pain, bloating, eczema, IBS, rash, dermatitis, and it may have a gradual onset. Food sensitivities are similar to an intolerance in that a component of the offending food cannot be broken down by your body. However, these reactions are various and less extreme. So some symptoms may include mood swings, headaches, digestive issues, hyperactivity, muscle aches, fatigue, and they may also have a gradual onset. Some of the most common that are in classrooms include meats, wheat or gluten, fruits and vegetables, dairy, caffeine, sugar, and artificial dyes. It's interesting to note that up to 79% of accidents occur in the classroom. So now that we are familiar with some of the terms related to food allergies, it's important to consider how well you know your child's food allergies. Think of specifics. Do you know if it's a true allergy versus a sensitivity, and how does that affect how you would treat it? Are there serious allergic reactions? And if so, do you have an action plan put in place? If you do have an action plan, have you communicated that plan with the school? Do you know what the school's policies are for handling food allergies? And are you prepared to challenge any school policies or procedures to better accommodate your child? And what information is necessary to do so? So these and many others are standard questions that some families face when trying to navigate the school environment. So before you jump into creating an action plan, It's important to really understand your child and how their allergies affect their academic ability. This will help in identifying modifications or accommodations that need to be made. Speaking with your child's healthcare provider can really help identify areas for improvement. As a parent, you may know that your child has specific behavioral responses to certain foods, and being able to target that in an assessment provides the school with the data they need to secure a proper learning environment. Based off school policies, you can create and propose a plan for your child's specific needs. It is then important to meet with teachers, aides, room moms, and cafeteria staff to discuss what your plans are to help make the classroom an allergy-friendly environment. If viewers haven't already, I would encourage everyone to visit foodallergy.org. The Food Allergy Research and Education, or FAIR, website has many resources for parents, for teachers and professionals, including a teacher's checklist for managing food allergies. You can find the link at the bottom of this PowerPoint, but to review, the first item on that checklist is to work with parents, the school nurse, and other appropriate school personnel to determine if any classroom modifications are needed to make sure that students with food allergies can fully participate in class activities. A teacher should then avoid the use of identified allergens in class projects, parties, holidays and celebrations, in arts and crafts, science experiments, cooking, and snacks or rewards. Modify class materials as needed. Teachers should also use non-food incentives for prizes, gifts, and awards, and consider designating an allergy-friendly seating arrangement in the cafeteria. You can include information about a child's special needs, including those with known food allergens, in instructions to leave to substitute teachers. Another item on the checklist is to encourage children to wash hands before and after handling or consuming food. Determine if intended location for a field trip is safe for students with food allergies, and if it is not safe, the trip might have to be changed or canceled if accommodations cannot be made. Students cannot be excluded from field trips because of food allergies. You should also avoid ordering food from restaurants because food allergens can be present but not recognized. And have rapid access to epinephrine autoinjectors, and if you suspect a severe food allergy reaction or anaphylaxis, take immediate action consistent with your school's food allergy management emergency response protocol. The last on this checklist is to be a good role model by respecting the needs of students with food allergies and reinforcing the school's rules against discrimination and bullying. If you are interested, again, I would just encourage everyone to visit the FAIR website for this type of checklist. I used this graphic because I felt it was an iconic representation of a standard sack lunch meal and one that would have any parent of a child with a peanut allergy cringing. Several of my interviews included parents reporting that they felt their child was most at risk during a field trip or a school social event, and many reported that they oftentimes knew of these activities in advance and would opt to have their child bring their own paper bag lunch for fear of what was given to them during the event. One parent noted that even then, it was hard for her children to stay accountable. Even after talking with teachers and chaperones, her kids still claimed that the best part of their trip was the yummy treats that were handed out. Talk about a surprise after packing a lunchbox full of gluten-free and dairy-free snacks, only to find out that their child had Cheetos and ham and cheese sandwiches for lunch. Fortunately, no serious reactions occurred. However, this may not always be the case for some kids. And for this reason, preparation is key, especially in the case of a school social or event. Again, going back to the FAIR website, they had some great tips for parents on how to better prepare for these experiences. For example, keep yourself up to date on upcoming special events in your child's school, so the more time you have to plan, the better. Remember that you and your child's teacher need to work together as a team to keep your child safe. and role play with your child and practice what your child should do if they feel a reaction is occurring. And oftentimes children are really reluctant to mention that they're having symptoms of an allergic reaction for fear of causing a scene or being embarrassed. So teach your child to be persistent. In the event of a reaction, rapid treatment is really essential. And after the event, you should call or meet with your child's teacher to discuss what went well and what, if anything, should be changed for the future. Be sure to give praise for a job well done. A thank you note reinforces the idea of teamwork and builds a positive atmosphere. In the case where your child does have a severe food allergy, communicating the serious consequences is vital to anyone working with your child. One parent suggested sending a letter to everyone in the school environment that has contact with your child. For her, this was sending a letter to her child's school nurse, the school administration, the cafeteria workers, the child's teacher, and the teacher's aide. She reported that mistakes typically occurred when she didn't insert herself as a team member, and that it is the parent's responsibility to facilitate success. When communicating your child's food allergies, think about the population you are speaking to. For example, one parent found it easier to talk to her child's teacher by reflecting on poor academic performance and inability to focus and pay attention during class, when or after they ate certain foods. This made the teacher understand the food allergy in respect to the way that the child behaves and the inability for their child to focus during the classroom. When speaking with other parents, it might be helpful to lead with research and statistics on current food allergies. For example, 1 in 13 children have at least one food allergy in the U.S., and research indicates that dietary intervention is not effective unless you are 100% compliant, meaning no cheats. And in necessary cases, include your healthcare provider. Get a written note from your physician to provide to the school administration, and relay to other parents that you are following professional advice for dietary guidelines. Help those to understand the severity of food allergies. For those parents that are working with teachers and staff that are supportive in the school environment, here are some helpful handouts that could be used in the classroom. They clearly identify the food allergies and help notify other parents and staff that the environment is allergy friendly. This decreases the likelihood of other parents bringing in non-allergy friendly treats or snacks and makes it easier for all children to participate in events and celebrations. Speaking of celebrations, in the case where the classroom is not an allergy-friendly environment, we may run into this type of scenario, the graphic above with a little girl being left out. This little girl is left alone at maybe a party and she's been excluded from the event. One parent that I interviewed noted that her child was often tempted with treats in the classroom and would continuously have to say no when offered. And it was helpful in these experiences for this parent to become familiar with the room mom. And room moms, for those that aren't aware, are parents that have volunteered to organize social events. So you can build and foster that relationship that you are always aware of when these social events are going to take place. And having this positive relationship with another parent can help your child stay successful in the classroom. And while it can seem really frustrating if your child may be consistently tempted with food in the classroom, it's important to stay positive and be willing to coordinate with the school staff. Many of the parents I spoke with encouraged this and offered this as their one piece of advice to other parents. This is a long-term process and one that can be very challenging, and effective communication is key. So really maintain those relationships. In the case where there wasn't a room mom or a volunteer that could help coordinate the event, another parent suggested taking responsibility and inserted herself to become the room mom to better stay in control of her child's diet. So she would volunteer for celebrations that she knew would involve food or snacks, and she would volunteer to host the events, offering safe alternatives. This goes back to being proactive and assuming responsibility. If her child was invited to a party, when she RSVP'd back, she would ask the parent in advance if it was okay for her to bring in some of her own treats and snacks, as her child had a food allergy, and she didn't want to inconvenience the host. Many parents were delighted to have this offered, and she commented that when hosting, many people might worry that they don't know what allergy-friendly snacks to make, so by offering to bring in her own, she was taking that stress away from the host. And there are many alternative foods and snacks that can be just as tasty and delicious. Going back to my interviews, many parents commented on how easy it was to buy gluten-free cupcakes and store them in the school's freezer. Should a celebration occur without the parent being notified, teachers could easily grab these alternatives from the freezer so that their child could participate. One mom was very creative in bringing gluten-free cupcakes and also packing several different colors of sprinkles. So should there be a wacky purple party, her child would have purple sprinkles ready. In this way, the tree was also similar to other peers' cupcakes. Another parent commented that she would make treats that were even more creative and tempting than typical candies or snacks. She found her child's favorite food and used that as an incentive. And while everyone else may be enjoying cake, her child was enjoying an ooey gooey allergy-friendly Rice Krispie treat. Many families also prepared a box of snacks or treats in advance and brought those to the classroom so teachers had something just in case they needed it. In addition to bringing in allergy-friendly snacks and treats, we could also consider bringing in non-edible treats during celebrations and events. For many children, Halloween parties include sharing their trick-or-treat candy and goodies. And every year at the Johnson Center, we offer a way for children with food allergies to share in this experience in a safe way. Children make their own trick-or-treat through our office as our staff hand out fun games, crafts, and toys. We include foods that are allergy-friendly and make fun crafts that are enjoyable for all ages. These simple modifications help make sure that all children are included. In addition to celebrations and events, parents should also be mindful of school crafts and activities. During my interview, one parent commented that her child rarely had an incident where she ingested a food she shouldn't have. She did, however, come home with blisters on her hands after playing with hard colored pasta. Her child experienced a contact allergic reaction. She was unaware her child had that type of response and did not think to include that in her action plan for the school. And after that experience, she had a meeting with the child's teacher and amended her plan to include that information. And these are all very important steps to consider when navigating the classroom. If you know that your child does respond to certain items, such as PlayDoh, there are many alternative and safe recipes that you can make. And here is an example of gluten-free PlayDoh. So we've reviewed communicating with teachers, communicating with other parents, and communicating with school staff. Let's briefly talk about ways to communicate with peers. One parent had some helpful advice. She said education is key, whether that be indirect or direct. In these experiences, she was asked to bring in a treat in honor of Mardi Gras. She brought in 2 separate cakes, one allergy-friendly and the other non-allergy-friendly. When the kids asked why she brought in 2, she simply said, because some kids can't have certain foods, and if we are going to bring in something to share, we have to have something for everyone. This was helpful for peers to learn about food allergies in a way that they could understand, in a way that was relatable. In a more direct way, parents or teachers could offer to read some of these great stories, such as The Princess and the Peanut Allergy or Taking Food Allergies to School. And you could offer to read that during story time to help children to identify and relate to these food allergies. The biggest lesson in all of this is inclusivity versus exclusivity. We can try our best to provide alternative snacks and to prepare an allergy-friendly diet, but if this prohibits children from participating in social events, they may be more likely to become emotionally vulnerable. And going back to the story of the child having to consistently refuse treats, well, she became very upset and isolated in the school setting. Her food allergies became part of her identity, and the school became a hostile environment. One parent noted that there was a separate space in the classroom for children with food allergies, although her child was the only one. So during events, her child would sometimes have to sit in the area alone or with an aide. Does anyone remember the tagline from the first slide, "Exclude the food, not the child"? While this classroom was conducive in providing a safe space, it was not necessarily the best option. To take this further, many students may carry a stigma throughout school as they continue to feel isolated or bullied due to dietary restrictions. Feeling left out can be really isolating and extremely hurtful. In many cases, our kids may not tell us when this is happening. It's important for teachers and staff to create a safe and supportive environment and for parents to check in to ensure that bullying is not occurring. As a parent, if you feel your child does need accommodations or modifications in the school environment, you may qualify for a 504 plan. Due to limited time today, we won't really go into depth or discuss, but I do encourage everyone to research what a 504 plan is, and if necessary, talk to your child's healthcare provider and their school to see what steps are involved in qualifying. For those that don't know, a 504 plan should be put in place when a child needs environmental accommodations. It should include a food allergy management plan and accommodation access and emergency care. It can be created with a physician in the form of a letter that includes a child's diagnosis, allergens, and reaction history. In your letter, you should also include strategies to prevent exposure to allergies in the classroom and strategies that will keep a child fully included in all aspects of the day. A 504 protects against discrimination. Once you are ready to create a 504 plan, you can set that up during a meeting with the school to discuss. As mentioned before, the FAIR website is an excellent resource for many parents and providers to learn more about food allergies, the 504 plan, and ways to keep our students safe and included. So we've discussed recommendations for navigating the classroom. Now we will dive into ways to navigate the cafeteria. Many of the parents I interviewed chose to pack their child's lunch every day, as opposed to relying on the school to provide alternative meals. Again, assuming parent responsibility, you're likely to have better outcomes. Many of the families I spoke with would offer their child several snack options or meals that the kids could choose from. So by getting their child involved, they were more likely to stay accountable. Again, offering favorite foods or snacks were also seen as an incentive as opposed to the lunch line. One parent had a suggestion for a treat day, not a cheat day, but a treat day in which her child was able to have her favorite allergy-friendly meal and snack. Making the child's lunch fun and enticing was one way to avoid a child refusing to cooperate. Another parent had a great suggestion to download the school menu if possible. Her child was allowed to pick one meal a month from that menu that would be allergy friendly, and this allowed her child to feel included in the lunch line experience. Many parents I interviewed found that it was actually easier to provide a lunch rather than rely on the school lunches, and they were able to get creative with their snacks. Many parents noted that their kids actually enjoyed and preferred these snacks over the school lunch. One parent had a great idea of bringing in allergy-friendly snacks for the entire classroom. This helped her kids feel less isolated, and peers got to recognize how tasty those alternatives could be. Some kids even preferred and requested those dairy-free, gluten-free brownies the parent would make during the holidays. So finding alternatives can be a way to get everyone involved and make it easier for other parents to identify how to look for allergy-friendly snacks. As many of you know, alternatives can be costly. So some of the families I interviewed reported that finding foods that are allergy-friendly can not only be difficult but expensive. One parent suggested that instead of looking for gluten or dairy-free packaged or boxed snacks or foods, she opted for looking for whole foods. She created snacks with fruits, vegetables, and made her own treats. Her family would gather together and meal prep, integrating siblings and creating a social experience. Another parent noted that she coordinated with other parents of children with food allergies to work on school snacks and treats. During an event, one parent would bring in the allergy-free cupcakes, another would bring in allergy-friendly pizza, and this helped to reduce the cost while also integrating that social piece. There are also many recipes that you can make, such as gluten-free puppy chow, that are inexpensive and they make enough to serve the entire classroom. You can find these recipes online, or you can visit our website to find fun and affordable allergy-friendly alternatives. This picture screams summer to me. There's something about ice cream and a hot day. But for a child with food allergies, this could be a really tough experience. You might feel a little more like the child in the center that appears to be a little more irritated with something. So fortunately now there are many dairy-free alternatives for ice cream. If you haven't already looked in your local grocery store, I would encourage you to do so. Many grocery stores have specifics for allergy-friendly alternatives. There's a specific aisle or location that you can try and find. One parent also suggested looking online for non-refrigerated items to have shipped to your home. There are even ice cream shops now that are offering allergy-friendly ice cream. It's important to consider some developmental concerns when implementing dietary intervention for a young child. For our younger population, we should communicate clearly with school administration how your child responds to certain food allergies. They may not clearly articulate when they have eaten something or what they had contact with, so identifying the source could be hard. If you notice a reaction or response, be sure and talk to your child's teacher immediately. One parent suggested that it might be helpful if you had your doctors talk to your child directly. This may make it less likely to be seen as punishment and more doctor's orders to help us feel better. We do want to address the idea that any type of restriction could be punitive. We want to make sure that our kids are still requesting certain foods and having positive experiences with certain foods. So really helping to identify what the challenge would be, especially for our young kids, helping them to have fun snacks and creative crafts with the food could help mediate that. If dietary intervention is implemented at a young age, it becomes easier for your child to stay accountable as they grow. However, some families reported that implementing change was difficult for their older kids. They reported that their kids were less likely to cooperate and more likely to cheat during school hours. Again, this goes back to the statistic of up to 79% of accidents happen in the classroom. For middle school students, this is especially seen during lunch hours. It's a very social experience for this age group, and being left out is a huge deal for them. Identifying ways to address this is the first step. The next step is talking with your child in ways that will help them to understand why their food allergies are so important and what to be aware of. Provide them with choices of foods that they can eat, and again, get them involved. Get them involved in the prepping and baking so that they can really feel like they are in control in some piece of it. One piece of advice a parent suggested for talking to teenagers and adolescents about food allergies is to give them perspective on the choices that they are making regarding their health and wellness. So help them to understand that it's our responsibility to take care of our own bodies. This will allow your child to take control and to promote their independence. You could also encourage them to connect to other peers with food allergies through online support groups. So again, just connecting, giving them that social piece of it. Just if you reflect back on the social piece, it's so helpful to offer an outlet for our kids that are struggling with feelings of isolation or with feelings like teasing or bullying, all of that. So really making sure that they have some outlet where they're able to connect with other peers who may understand the difficulties they're facing. I'd like again to thank those that participated in the interviews and helped us to gather information and think of ways to help others that may be struggling with food allergies, food sensitivities or intolerances, or food restrictions. The more we discuss and communicate with others, the more we can raise awareness and create change. And remember, our goal is to balance safety while also fostering inclusion and normalcy. I'd like to take this time to answer any questions that come in, and if you offer any advice or any suggestions for other parents. Again, this webinar is really to help parents connect to other parents. So I'll be reading through some of the questions as they come in and offering some guidance or perspective from other parents. Okay, so one of the first questions is, do I need a signed letter from my doctor to get the diet recognized in my IEP? That is a great question, and thank you so much for bringing up an IEP. I think during today's webinar, we discussed a 504 plan. For those that aren't aware, an IEP is an individual education plan, and some students that have food allergies may qualify for accommodations under their IEP, which is different from a 504 plan. And so yes, it's very important that parents get a letter from their doctor stating that for medical reasons, your child cannot have certain foods, and then those foods should be listed. The letter should also include safe alternatives for your child, and you can bring that to your IEP meeting. An example of how you could incorporate your medical letter into your IEP is to state that your child has food allergies is on a medically necessary special diet per physician's order, and then you would attach the letter to the IEP document. And you could also add that no foods should be given to your child, and parents should provide all meals and snacks during parties or events. So the IEP, in the same way as the 504, you would review that with the school and then sign off, and that's something that the school would be able to use as a guideline or framework. Another question, should I expect other parents to provide allergen-friendly snacks at a birthday party? And I think this goes back to that great graphic that we used during our webinar, Being Alone Said No One Ever. So it's really, it's hurtful for parents to consider the fact that their child would be isolated during a birthday party or event and something that they can't control, they're not participating in. But there is that sense of parent responsibility. And as that other parent from the interview mentioned, she always felt it was her responsibility to care for her child's safety and well-being. And so she would always contact the host the day of the event or before the event and just ask if it was okay to bring in her own piece of cake or a piece of cupcake. That way she had that alternative for her child, and she didn't assume that the other parents would have anything. And sometimes the case was that the other parents would offer alternatives, and they would go to social events where there would be allergy-friendly snacks or treats, but it's better to be safe than sorry in that case, and just to always plan on bringing in something. And in this way, it also allows you to bring in a preferred item. So even if the host was offering allergy-friendly snacks, it may not be something that your child actually really enjoys or likes. And so if you brought in a preferred item or a preferred snack, it's still rewarding for the child. It's still enticing for them. Should I teach my child a go-to phrase to use when friends ask why he or she eats different foods? I think that this is a really great question, especially for our younger kiddos, right? To talk to peers about why they have to eat certain foods or why they can't eat certain foods. And I think that this is actually a really great idea. It goes back to our developmental concerns for young children. So if we did some type of role play, this would be a way to help foster the language that your child is using when explaining their food allergies and kind of get a better understanding of what their sense is, why they have to eat these certain foods. And so if there are any misunderstandings or misconceptions, again, if they are thinking that this is punishment, you're able as a parent to clarify that through a safe space, working through play, you know, communicating with them in a way that they would understand. And so helping them to say, if a friend is asking you why you can't eat certain foods, what do you say? And then helping them to respond back. You can say this to your friend. How do I get the school to help me enforce a prescribed elimination diet when my child isn't cooperating? He is taking food off of other people's trays in the lunchroom. First, I think that a lot of us can relate to this, right? Especially for our middle or high school kids, it can be really hard to control their behavior in the cafeteria. But I think that you would want to first off discuss as a family and figure out the best way for your child to understand how their food allergies impact their health. Depending on the developmental level of the child, you want to communicate in different ways, but that's the first step, is as a family coordinating with a parent and a child and talking to them about how important it is to eat certain foods and to stay away from other foods. You may also want to reevaluate what your current plan is for navigating the cafeteria environment. So if you have a 504 plan or if it's included in your IEP, what are the specifications? Do you have any support during that time? And if not, are you able to bring in any support? Does your child have an aide during this time that you are able to bring into the cafeteria? And if so, these ideas and thinking through that could be set up during your next 504 IEP meeting where you discuss, is it possible to bring in an aide or someone that can help enforce that policy during this time? And putting that into specific guidelines for the school will help to get everyone involved, and that's really the best answer. Here's a great one. How do I talk to other parents who are planning school events about my child's food allergies? We are having a Halloween fair and all of the activities are food-based. So all the prizes for games are candy and the main event is a cakewalk. Again, I think this is a great question because it's something we can all relate to. And it kind of goes back to that slide where we talked about the this, not that. So the treats versus candies are the toys versus candies. I would encourage you to be part of the event as the other parent had recommended. So really volunteer to be the host. If you are in a position to volunteer, that would be a great way to control what is being offered. You could offer to host a booth or an activity that is non-food based. So for example, you could do something like fortune telling, or you could offer a trick-or-treat booth where what you're offering to the kids isn't candy, but instead it's a toy. So as I mentioned at the Johnson Center, that's what staff do as our kids go through office to office. We are handing out stickers and pencils and erasers. We're offering little toys, things that are non-edible instead of food-based items. And so this would help to get others to see the value in offering alternatives while also not relying on other parents to make those modifications. And hopefully once everyone is able to see how easy it is to be creative and offer non-edible treats, that they may follow along. A thought is that you can also bring extra prizes and offer those to other booths, gently reminding everyone that some kids have food allergies, so it may be safer to offer this type of reward instead. Another question, the school nurse told me she thinks gluten-free diets are all a fad. How can I get her on board with my daughter's prescribed eating plan? So I think the first thing that you can do is to really help her to understand, and for that maybe bringing in a note from your physician documenting your child's food allergies. Again, if you're thinking through creating that 504 plan and having your physician be involved in that, it's really that's really the best way in communicating, not just with the teacher but with everyone involved. And it goes back to what that parent said, is a letter to anyone who has contact with your child, the teachers, teachers' aides, school nurse, really helping everybody understand the significance and severity of your child's food allergies. But honestly, if you have a 504 plan, it doesn't matter if somebody thinks that the diet is a fad or not, the school is still accountable for ensuring that accommodations are provided. Here's another question, where can I find resources or a list of allergy-friendly foods online? So if you Google allergy-friendly foods online, you will find so many resources and websites offering lists of ingredients and foods that are allergy-friendly. But I first would encourage you, before going through those websites, to talk to your dietitian or your nutritionist if you're working with a physician and see if they recommend any allergy-friendly products, because again, if you Google it, you're going to get a surplus of information, and you just want to make sure that your child is getting the best product possible, and if your child has a specific food allergy, thinking through what that means for that child. I believe you could also go to snacksafely.com, or you can visit our website for recipes or treats that are allergy friendly. Another question, what recommendations do you have for traveling or for vacations during or with dietary elimination plans? Again, there are actually many resources and websites online that can help families with travel information for food allergies. One website, I believe it's called Allergy Eats. They allow you to actually plug in the address of where you're traveling to, and that generates a list of allergy-friendly restaurants, which is really nice. If you're driving during your vacation, it's always helpful to consider bringing along an ice chest full of your child's favorite allergy-friendly snacks and foods. If you're flying, you might want to consider looking into local grocery stores in the area that you're traveling to. So when you get there, you could arrange to go and pick up some of those allergy-friendly items or snacks or preferred foods. What ideas do you have for gluten-free, casein-free, soy-free, and nut-free lunchbox meals? That's a great question. I think it depends on your child's food preferences. So remember, you want to pack a lunch that's enticing. If pizza is what everyone's having for lunch, then try and find a gluten-free alternative. If your child wants to eat a sandwich and have chips, then think of crunchy alternatives like gluten-free pretzels, or they have gluten-free bean chips, and use gluten-free bread for your sandwiches. And for a sweet treat, Enjoy Life, which was on the PowerPoint a couple of slides ago. They make some really delicious treats and yummy cookies that you could put into a lunchbox. I'd like to thank everyone for attending today's webinar. I hope that this information was valuable to you, and these were really great questions. Thank you guys for sharing, and thank you again to those that participated in the interview and helped bring this information and awareness to others.